It's not, your traditional ASMR video that I usually make. But, I kind of want to do something different just for Halloween, just because, it's spooky season. It's the best day to tell this kind of story that, the story that I'm going to tell you is 100% real. I'm not making it up at all. This is something that happened to me when I was a child, growing up, and it's stuck with me ever since it happened, and I still remember it just like it was yesterday, so it's up to you if you want to believe me. You don't have to believe me, but, this is 100%, I'm not bullshitting, I'm not, making up a story just to, just for Halloween. So, yeah, I'm gonna try to do as little cuts as possible just because I want to try to keep the story concise. So, I may or may not get tongue twisted every now and then, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. So, thank you all for watching the video. Thank you all, for tuning in and listening. And I guess without further ado, let me just get started. So, this story takes place back in 2004. I was 10 years old at the time, and what a surprise, it was actually Halloween morning when this story takes place. Well, at the start of the story takes place on Halloween morning because, like I said, I was 10 years old. I was getting up, getting ready for school. I went and grabbed my costume. It was Bloody Scream. I'm sure you've heard of Scream before, the white ghost mask. But my ghost mask had like blood that can be pumped through it because it came with like an accessory that like it had like a heart attached to it. And you would fill, the heart with water and like dye it red with food coloring. So anytime you would squeeze the heart, blood would just, gush over in front of the mask. It was really cool. So that was my Halloween costume. That was my go-to Halloween costume, I'm pretty sure. I was Bloody Scream for like 2 to 3 years in a row, just because I really loved that costume. And so I get ready, I get dressed for school, and I'm in the car, I'm excited. I have my brothers there because I went to the same school as my brothers. I had 2 brothers and a cousin that lived with me at the time. My oldest brother, he was actually in high school, so he didn't go to the same school as me. But my middle brother, he's older than me, of course, and my cousin, both of them are the same age. They're 4 years older than me, so I was in 4th grade and they were in 8th grade. I was 10 years old and they were about, 13 or 14 years old at the time. So, I'm in the car, we're listening to music, we're jamming out, and I ask my mom because she's driving, and I'm telling her, oh, are we gonna be going trick-or-treating this evening? We are, right? And my mom is like, yes, we're gonna go trick-or-treating, of course we are. And so, I'm excited, I'm ready, I'm pumped. I'm over here grabbing onto the heart, I'm squeezing it just because I love seeing the blood trickle down from my mask. So, we arrive at my school. It's about 7 a.m. in the morning, 7:30. And, at my school, we usually make line before school starts. Each class individually has to make, a line, and we hang out at our designated spot because my school, you can think of it as, it was kind of like, think of like a staple. It was in the shape of like an unstapled staple, a box, what shape would that be, That would be like almost a box, but without the top, if that makes sense. And in the very middle was like a big open area. It was like a parking lot, but that's where all the students would gather in the morning. And in this same parking lot, every Halloween, the school would kind of have like a festival where we would go to class at first, and when recess time came, the whole school would make time for a big festival where all the students would gather, at their designated spots in the classroom, but we would make a big circle like around the parking lot area because the parking lot area was actually pretty big. And we would have spooky music playing. The music teacher would have like Halloween themed music playing, and all the teachers and even parents would come and watch this little festival because all of the students, it would go, kindergarten would go first, and then first grade, second grade, third grade, and they would kind of parade in a circle. It would just be a big circle of, all the students in their costume, walking around, showing off their costume. It was a lot of fun, there I was, thinking I was looking cool with my scream mask, pumping the blood, trying to, freak out all students. It was a lot of fun, So we go back to the classrooms, and the students would actually, sometimes they would bring candy, students and the students' parents would sometimes come into the classroom, they distribute candy, we'd have our candy bag, and it was a lot of fun. So fast forward, once the school ended, my mom picks us up. My brother's I consider my cousin my brother as well, but my cousin and my middle brother, we went home. It was probably around 3 p.m., 4 p.m. when we got home. And, I go home, I get undressed, I take off my costume, just because, you want to be comfortable when you're at your house. And I sit down, I try to do, whatever schoolwork I had. And then once I finished the schoolwork, I would just I would wait with my brothers just until it was time for trick-or-treating, because that's what we would be looking forward to the most. So we'd either watch TV or we'd pull out the PlayStation, because we had 2 living rooms. So when you get to my house, we have a big long driveway that it fits about, realistically about 5 cars would fit in that driveway, one after another, because it was a single lane driveway whenever you pull up, and our garage would be at the end of that driveway. But we didn't have 5 cars, we only had 2 cars at the time. But we would park our cars, somewhat deep. And, this time around we did park our cars somewhat deep inside, because you would fit 5 cars, like I said, and at around the 3rd car, at the 3rd car, where the passenger side was, that's where technically there would be like a passageway to get to my front door, because the way that my house was laid out is we have our car, so think of it this way, there's like a driveway over here on the side that goes all along the side of my house, and to the right of my house would be, or to the right of the driveway would be my house, and you'd have to walk all the way to the right hand side of my house, and there would be the front door. And whenever you walk into the front door, you would turn to the left, and there would be a big open area, which would be the living room. And so you'd have to walk through the living room to get to the kitchen. And the kitchen was, a small area. And behind the kitchen, so you walk through the living room, you get to the kitchen, and then behind the kitchen there was, another entranceway. There wasn't a doorway there, but there was an entranceway to like another mini living room, where the size of that living room was relatively small compared to the one to the front of the house. The second living room, think of it as it would be the length of a couch, would be as long as the wall, and then you could fit another couch on the other side of the wall, and that would technically be the size of that small living room. And to the right hand side of that second living room would be a mirror. It would be a sliding door mirror, and it was kind of like a closet as well, so it was a closet with a big sliding door. And to the left of that would be a hallway that would lead to my parents' room, where I shared a room with my parents. time because my brother and my cousins, they shared a room that was next to my parents as well. But it was also in that hallway. So my parents' room was at the end of that hallway, and my brother's room would be to the right hand side of that hallway. Now, let me, now keep in mind, at the very first living room, like I said, whenever you enter my house, you would turn left, and that's how you would get through the living room into the rest of the house. But if you just kept on walking straight, there was kind of like a mini hallway, and to the right hand side, my eldest brother, the one who was in high school, his room was right there. So there was like a separate room on the side and a bathroom. So now that I explained, kind of the layout of my house, I hope that made sense, by the way. It was probably around like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., it was almost getting dark because, whenever it's like October time, daylight saving times, it's about to happen and the days start getting shorter. So realistically, it started to be nighttime around 6:30 p.m. It would kind of be dark already, and my mom wasn't feeling too good. She was the one who usually took us to go trick-or-treating. She would walk around with my brothers in previous years. It'd be me and my brother and my cousin who lived with us. And so my mom, she wasn't feeling good. She told us, hey, I'm gonna go to the store really quickly, and I'm gonna buy you guys a big bag of candy because since she wasn't feeling too well, she wanted us to stay home that year and distribute candy to trick-or-treaters, because usually my dad would do that, but my dad was working late at the time, so he didn't get home until probably like 8 p.m. or something like that. And so, I'm trying to think. So my mom goes to the store, me and my brothers are kind of bummed out. We're like, man, we really wanted to go trick-or-treating this year. I wanted to show off, my costume, my bloody scream costume. So my mom gets home and she brings a big bag of variety candy. There was M&Ms in there was Twix, there were Skittles, there was just a bunch of different types of candy in there. Realistically thinking, I was looking at my brother and my cousin, we were like, hey, we get to keep whatever candy is left over. So even though we didn't go trick-or-treating this year, the big bag of candy was more than enough to fill, whatever we would have gotten from trick-or-treating. And, sure, we wouldn't have gotten, all of these unique candies that, like, some people have, all these exotic kind of, like, lollipops and stuff like that. But, hey, we weren't mad about it. We had a lot of candy there, granted, if there wasn't that many trick-or-treaters. So that night, the job was between my middle brother, my cousin, and myself to distribute candy. And because there was a living room right in front of like our front door, my cousin and myself, we had our PlayStation in that living room. So me and my cousin, we were just playing games. We were probably playing like, I forget, it was either like Dragon Ball or it was NBA Street. Those games were a lot of fun. We used to play those all the time. So we would just be playing video games. Meanwhile, we waited for, people to knock at our front door whenever the trick-or-treaters started coming. And we were already in our costume, I was, like I said, I was Bloody Scream. And my cousin, he was one of the Dementors from Harry Potter. And my middle brother, he didn't really dress up because since we didn't go trick-or-treating, he just stayed in the second living room, the one that's behind the kitchen, the living room that's a little bit smaller. He was just, hanging out, watching TV. He was probably on MTV, watching MTV. And for those of you who don't know what MTV is, back in the day, it was a TV channel that all they did was play music videos of like the current music that was on the radio. I missed those days. So my brother was chilling in the second living room watching TV. But my oldest brother, the one that was in high school, he was in his room, but he was studying because I think my brother, he was always studying. He was always in his room, reading and stuff like that. Because my oldest brother, he was 8 years older than me, so 4 years older than my middle brother and my cousin, and 8 years older than me. So he wasn't really into trick or treating anymore. He kind of grew out of that phase. So he didn't really care that much, So he was just hanging out in his room, doing his own thing, reading, studying, whatever it was that he was doing. So it was probably about like 7 p.m., we hear the first knock, and, trick or treat, a lot of trick or treaters come here. There was like 3 people, 4 people. Me and my cousin, we open the door, we're like, hey, hello. We give them, we hold out the big bag of candy, or like, just grab a handful, go ahead, grab some pieces of candy, grab what you need. They're all like, oh, thank you, they grab it, they leave. And then probably like 10 minutes after that, the next batch of trick-or-treaters came, trick or treat, they knock on our door again. And so we give them candy and stuff like that. And of course, that process went on for until about 10 p.m. But I think around it was like 10 p.m. where the trick-or-treaters kind of started to slow down a bit. So me and my cousin, after a while, we got bored of playing video games. So we were just hanging out outside, in our front lawn, at our front yard, because our front yard was, it was actually kind of big, because like I said before, our driveway fit about five cars, and around at the 3rd car was where our house was, and it was still 2-car length of the size of like my front lawn. So think about like 2 cars parked, that's kind of like the size of our front yard, maybe a little bit bigger. And so it was probably like around 10ish p.m. where me and my cousin were just outside, sitting outside, enjoying the cool night. It was starting to get cloudy outside. It was half cloudy, but you can still see the moon, out in the background, which was kind of cool. I always love looking at the moon. I feel a certain way whenever I look at the moon, And so there's not that many trick-or-treaters coming anymore, The night's kind of getting a little bit slow. I do remember there was a big group of trick-or-treaters that night. It was at least like 10 to like 13 kids with like 4 parents, just waiting, They didn't enter our driveway, but all the kids, it was like 10 of them. And me and my cousin were looking at each other like, uh-oh, they're gonna steal all of our candy, oh no. So, they come. It was probably like around, 10:30ish when that happened. And, so they come, they grab some of our candy, I'm looking at my cousin and I'm telling him, hey, there's still some candy left in here, we still have a decent amount for us to eat and enjoy, and, we can give some to my oldest brother and my middle brother, and we'd still have, a decent amount of candy, as if we went trick-or-treating, kind of. So, I'm waiting outside, and then eventually, it's around 10:40ish, almost 11, and we don't really see that many people anymore outside, there's like practically nobody else, walking around outside. And to give you kind of like a layout of how my street was, at my house, so think of it as basically one street, but where my house is, it was like a fork in the road. The main street, it would continue on to the right-hand side of that fork, so it would continue on to the right-hand side of that fork in the road, and on the left-hand side of that same street of that fork in the road, that's where my house was, and my house was the 3rd house on the fork of the road. So right at the fork of the road, there was one house, right where that fork started, and then my neighbor was at the next house, and then my house was the 3rd house, and in between on the other side of the road, right in the middle, there was a big house right in front of my house. And so that fork in the road, it kind of continued, that street, it was kind of like a big oval. That street eventually met up with each other, but it was a good, 1,000 feet before those two streets met up with each other again and became, one single street again. So, again, my house was on the left-hand side of that fork in the road, and so it was probably around like 10:40 p.m. where I go back inside, and at that point, my mom was already, getting ready for bed. I go to my room, which was actually my parents' room as well. Like I said, we shared a room. And at that point, my dad had gotten home already, but, he was tired. He probably got home around 9 p.m. After work. And so, I go to my mom and I tell her, hey, can we come back inside now? There's not that many people outside anymore. And she told me, like, hey, before you come back inside with your cousin and, close the door for trick-or-treaters and stuff like that, make sure there's nobody else outside on the road, that's walking around, any straggler trick-or-treaters that might want to come, to our house and trick-or-treat. So at this point, my cousin was already back inside, so I go outside. I go out to the front, to the very end of our driveway, almost entering the street. And so I walk out of my driveway. Now keep in mind, when I look to my right hand side, that's where that main road was, right before it kind of became, a two-way street, in a way, almost like a V. So, I walk out to my front, the driveway, I look to my right hand side, and it's a big kind of open area. There's a lot of houses. There's not that many trees. There's very few trees, and you can see the road clearly. There was nobody left outside that I saw that was walking around. And I'm like, okay, there's nobody else left over here on this side, so let me look to my left. And so I look to my left-hand side of that street, and mind you, there's probably like 2 or 3 street lights. So the street is kind of dimly lit in a way, but you can still see enough, if there's people walking around on the street. And of course, the houses have like their front porch lights on and stuff like that. So I'll look to my left-hand side, and again, whenever you look to the left-hand side, let me explain that. The visibility is about 200 feet. So there's about 8 houses, stacked on that driveway where the visibility is. It's about 8 houses until the street curves enough to where you can't see that street anymore. So it's about 8 houses, about 200 feet, 60 meters if I'm not mistaken, for those of you who use meters. So I'll look to my left, and I don't see anybody anymore. I don't see anybody, whenever I look to my left at the end of the street. So I'm like, okay, there's nobody left trick-or-treating. So right before, I turn my head, or I turn around just to come back inside, I noticed that there's like a big tree, like right around at that 8th house, right where the street starts to curve enough where you can't see that street anymore. So I see the tree, it's like rustling as if there's a lot of wind, there's like a lot of wind as if it was rustling. So I look and I'm like, hey, that's kind of weird. I don't feel any wind at all over here. So I look to the house in front of me, and again, I see the trees, the leaves on that tree, that house that's right on the fork of the road, like right in the middle. There's a house there, and it had a big tree, like at its front porch, and it was very tall. And I look up, and the leaves are rustling as well. It looks as if it's very windy, but it's strange because I don't feel any wind myself. And I'm like, hey, hey, that's kind of weird. And I look around, I look to my right again to see if any of the trees on the right hand side of the road was where the main road was. And none of the leaves, none of the trees were rustling when I looked on that side. Okay, sorry for that cut. My cat came to my room and started making a lot of noise, so I had to cut the video there. But as I was saying, so I look to my left, and so I see the tree that's all the way at the 8th house, and it's a big tree. It's a very big tree, and all the leaves are rustling, you know. It's as if it's very windy, you know. You can hear the leaves rustling, so I turned back, I looked to my right hand side again, to the where the main road was, and I noticed that the trees over there weren't really rustling that much, you know. It was barely anything, none at all, as if it was, you know, very still. But when I look in front of me, to the house in front of me, you know, the leaves are rustling like this, very little, not a lot, but the leaves are definitely rustling. So I look again to my to my left hand side, where the big, you know, where the road curves a bit right at the end where that tree was. And again, it was that big tree where it was rustling violently, you know. It was rustling a lot. And at that moment, you know, I noticed that there was something, you know, kind of behind the tree, but above it. So it was slightly behind the tree, out of visibility, but you could see something, you know, kind of sticking out up from above, and it was spinning. It was spinning, and it had lights on it, and I was like, hey, that's kind of weird. Why is there lights up above on that tree? And it was different colored lights. It was blue lights, it had white, it had yellow, and I think that's about it. So it was blue, white, and yellow, and I think there was a bit of red. Yeah, there was a bit of red. And that yellow color, it was kind of like a yellowish orange color. And, you know, I just see the lights, you know, kind of spinning, and it was changing colors, and I'm like, hey, wait, is that a UFO? So I turn around, you know, I run back inside, you know, as quickly as possible, you know, I'm running back inside to the house. And my cousin is there first, and I'm like, yo, come look outside, come look quickly, come look. And so I tell my cousin to go outside quickly, and as my cousin's running outside, you know, I run to where my brother was, my oldest brother, the one that has his room kind of close to the living room right there. So I go inside my brother's room, and I'm like, hey, Luigi, look, Luigi, there's a UFO outside, there's a UFO. And he's like, what? There's not a UFO outside. Those aren't real. And he's like, go do something else. I'm busy right now, because he was like reading or something. So I go back to the living room, and I'm running. I run through the kitchen to where my second brother was, my middle brother. And I'm like, hey, look, there's a UFO outside. There's a UFO outside. Come look, come look, come look. So my brother, he gets up, and he, you know, me and him, we go, you know, we're running to the front of the house, right to the driveway. And, you know, I tell my cousin and my middle brother, you know, look over there behind that tree. There's a UFO over there behind that tree. You can see it. Can you see it? And so my brother, you know, he's looking, and my cousin, they're trying to see, you know, and they see it too. They're like, hey, they see it, and they're like, what? Is that really a UFO? No way, that's a UFO. And, you know, it was kind of hard to see because, like I said, the UFO, it was right behind that big tree, you know. The vision of it was kind of obstructed. So you can see, like, the top of it kind of sticking out. But also, you know, from behind the tree, you can see a little bit, you know, sticking out kind of in front of it. And it was kind of spinning. So my middle brother, he tells me, go get the binoculars, go get the binoculars. And of course, me being the littlest one, you know, the youngest one, I ran back to my room, or not to my room, I ran back inside to the house, you know, running back through the living room, cutting through the kitchen, getting into the second living room that we have, and right there to that closet, the one that leads to that big hallway cousin's room, there was that big, sliding glass, sliding mirror closet, and the binoculars were inside of that closet. So I opened the mirror up, and I'm fumbling through the stuff trying to find the binoculars, and hey, I found it, somewhat quickly, and funny, it's this same pair of binoculars. So I'm holding this binocular, and I'm running back. I'm running through the house, as fast as I can. So I make it back, and I'm like, my brother just snatches it out of my hand, because him being the oldest, the older one, of course, they have to be the ones to do everything first, while, the youngest one always has to do everything last. So my brother, he grabs the binoculars, and, he starts looking. And he's like, whoa, that really is a UFO. And, he's looking at it, he's hawking it. He's probably looking at it for a good, it was almost like 40 seconds of him just looking at it through the binoculars. And I'm like, yeah, I want to see before it leaves. So I grabbed the binoculars, and I'm taking a look at it. And as I look, I can see the UFO. It was actually, you can see it clear as day. It was spinning, and the shape of this UFO, it was almost like a diamond, in cartoons. Whenever you see like a diamond, or in video games, it's kind of like flat at the top and then pointy at the bottom. Well, that's similar to the shape of this UFO, except it had like that diamond shape. It was flat at the top, and it was curved a bit in the shape of a diamond, but at the bottom of it, instead of it being, very pointy at the bottom, it was kind of flat and rounded out in a bit. So it kind of, curved, and it rounded out, and it was flat at the bottom. So I'm looking at the UFO through my binoculars again, and I hand it over to my cousin so that he could see as well. So he takes a look at it, and he's like, whoa, that really is a UFO. And then my middle brother, he grabs it again. He's looking at it through the binoculars, and at this point, the tree that's in front of us, it started getting really, really windy. It started to pick up a bit, way more than it was previously. The leaves were rustling a lot. It was rustling a lot and a lot and a lot. So it gets to the point where I get the binoculars again, and as I'm looking through the binoculars at that tree, I start seeing the UFO. It starts moving into sight. It starts getting out of the way of the UFO, as if it's crossing the street, because like I said, my house was on the left-hand side of the street, that veered off on that fork of the road. So my house was on the left-hand side, and there were also houses on the right-hand side of my street. So the UFO, it starts moving clear as day into visibility. Like, I can finally see all of the UFO, and it stops in the middle of the street. It's kind of just hovering, it's hovering, and it's spinning, somewhat slowly, kind of like this, it's not fast, but it's not slow either, just enough that you can see each individual light as it's spinning. It's flashing red, it's flashing blue, it's flashing, that yellowish orange color, and it had like white lights under it as well. Where the bottom part of a diamond, where, like I said, where it wasn't pointy, but it was flattened out, there was a bunch of white lights coming from under that. And so as I'm looking, through the binoculars, I see, the landing gear starts coming out of through the bottom part of where it's flattened out, and that part of the UFO, it wasn't spinning. It had the middle part of the UFO. It kind of looked almost like your traditional flying saucer, because it had like a band going around through the middle of that UFO. So think of it like there's see landing gear coming out of it as if, it's a tripod, kind of like what a camera uses, a tripod, you know what a tripod is, 3 prongs coming out from the bottom. It starts coming out, and then, I hand over the binoculars to my brother so he can see as well, and he as well, he confirms it, and he's like, whoa, it looks as if it's gonna land. And at that point, I don't need the binoculars anymore to be able to see the UFO because I can clearly see it, clear as day right at the end of that street, right as it curves, So the UFO, it starts moving again. It starts crossing the street, and, there's a house right on the edge, right there, as well, on that right-hand side of the road. And that house also has, like, a tree, over there. And you can see that the UFO, actually, it's as if it's starting to land because it's descending in altitude. It's coming closer to the ground, but it's still, descending kind of behind where that house is, or in front of that house. So the UFO, it's descending, and, the trees are still rustling a lot, like this. And it gets to the point where you can barely see the UFO anymore because it's almost out of vision because it's going right behind, that tree, where that house is on that right-hand side of the street, right where the street starts to curve. So you can almost barely see that UFO. So I have the binoculars, and at that point, the landing gear is fully, retracted a couple feet. It's probably like about 25 feet below that UFO, 20 to 25 feet under that UFO. It has like that tripod, 3 prongs under it that come out as if it's going to land. And it gets to the point where right before you can barely see the UFO anymore because it's actually, landing right in front of that house to where we can't see it at all because the road had curved way too much so that we can't see that UFO. And, my brother and my cousins, we were too scared, to run up all the way to see, to get a closer look. We were just fine with seeing the UFO from our driveway. So the moment I lose sight of that UFO, keep in mind the trees are rustling violently, but the moment it gets out of vision, everything just completely stops. The trees stop rustling, and the leaves, they're not moving anymore. That tree that was moving very violently, at that 8th house where the road started to curve, where the UFO initially was, completely stopped. It was not moving anymore, as if there was no more wind at all. And it was so strange, It was such a weird sensation because we clearly saw, my brother and my cousin, we clearly saw, clear as day, that the leaves were all rustling very, very violently. But the moment that UFO lost vision of us, it just stopped, and we were just dumbfounded at what happened, And I was talking to my brother, and we were debating if we should go take a closer look to see what's happening, Is that UFO there? Did it somehow leave? What do we do? Should we go tell somebody? So, I quickly go back inside. Me and my brothers, my middle brother and my cousin, we run back inside of the house, and I'm the first one. I tell my brother what happened, my oldest brother, the one that was still inside of his room hanging out. I tell him what happens, but he didn't believe us. He thought we were just making some stuff up because it was Halloween, and that we wanted to scare him, but he didn't believe us. And so at that point, my mom was already sleeping, and my dad was in the room also. He was also sleeping, passed out, because at this point it was probably like 11:30 at night, almost midnight, when all of this happened, when it went down. And so I just remember, talking to my brother and my cousin, my middle brother and my cousin, trying to make reason of what happened. Like, did that really happen? Did we really see a UFO? Like, we still couldn't believe it, and to this day, I still can't believe what I saw, but I'm telling you, man, that was what I saw. And the next day, school happens again, and, I'm trying to tell all of my classmates what happened, but of course, nobody's gonna believe a UFO story. Um, they're all like, no, that's fake, I don't believe you. Yeah, right, UFOs aren't real. You're just trying to make something up, but, hey, that's how it is sometimes, Sometimes some people don't believe you, and I guess sometimes some people will, but, hey, that's up to you if you want to believe my story, but that's definitely what happened to me back in 2004 on a Halloween night, It's still crazy, telling this story. I can still, see the clear images in my brain, as I'm telling the story, It's so crazy. But yeah, that's basically my UFO encounter. I remember the next day when me and my brothers came home from school. My cousin and my brother, we all grabbed our bikes and we started riding our bikes, during the day. The moment we got home from school, we grabbed our bikes and we started riding our bikes to see that house where that UFO, where it landed, where we lost sight of it, and we couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. That house seemed, untouched, as if nothing happened, but I don't know what happened. I can't explain. I just can't explain what happened. It was so weird to me. Just seeing those trees, moving, rustling, as if there was a lot of wind, but at ground level where me and my brothers were, there was no wind at all. That's still a weird thing to think about. And to this day, that's my only UFO encounter. I've never experienced anything else, anything else paranormal, anything out of the ordinary. It's just that one incident. So yeah, that's pretty much my Halloween story of what happened when I was 10 years old. So it's up to you if you want to believe me. You don't have to believe me, but hey, that's what happened. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in to my story. I hope that it made sense. I hope there was nothing confusing about the story, and if there was, I'll try to answer whatever questions you guys might have in the comments. And if you guys have any similar stories like this, anything weird that's ever happened, UFO, maybe you saw a ghost or something, definitely let me know. I think those things are pretty interesting. So yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. See ya.